Have you ever wondered why some products completely fail older users while others are seeing massive success? In today's episode of the AgeTech Podcast, I am joined by Dr. Michal Halperin Ben Zvi, who helped Simply boost conversions by 75% among users over the age of 50. And the best part? These changes actually helped improve engagement across all age groups. In our conversation, we reveal why accessibility alone isn't enough and provide actionable tips you can implement today, even on a bootstrapped budget. Stay tuned to learn why age-inclusive design actually makes your product better for everyone. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the AgeTech Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Michal Halperin Ben Zvi, who is an expert on creating age-inclusive digital interfaces. Michal, welcome to the show.
Hi, Karen, and hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Karen. I'm very happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what it is that you actually do on your day-to-day job.
I'm working with either B2C companies or B2B2C companies, and I help them to increase the conversion and the engagement of all the users. And I do it by working closely with the product team, either through research and validate the hypothesis that we have, or through evaluate their own platforms and suggesting way for intervention. I came from psychology. Originally, I have my PhD in psychology of aging, so using all the experience that I have and to help them to achieve growth in this field.
You work with startups to basically help them increase engagement with their products. So at what stage of the product's life cycle would you say that a startup needs to take into consideration creating their user interfaces in an age-inclusive way?
It depends where we focus. If we have an AgeTech product, if we're aiming only to focus on older adults, or if we have a product that targets younger segments, and in a certain point we want to grow it by making it more age-friendly or just to increase the market share by reaching also to older users. So it's really depends on the product and where founders choose to focus.
Okay, so let's say that I have a product that is for the general public, and the product already uses best practices for accessibility. Why do I need to go through the extra step of making it age-inclusive? Isn't an accessible product already age-inclusive?
Not at all. Accessibility is really one tiny portion of what it means to have an inclusive design. First, we need to take into account that most of the older users will not use the accessibility plugin because they not define themselves as people with some kind of disability. Since getting old means that slowly I start losing certain abilities that I have, whether it's low vision or whether it's hearing loss or motor functions, the ability to regulate our hands and our fingers. So it's really gradual changes. So they don't define themselves as people with disabilities. So it's not that in a certain age, okay, I turn into 17, now I suddenly realize that I need to change my web definitions and so on. So it's not something that happens in one day, and they will not define themselves as people with disabilities. A lot of the things that already are in the field of accessibility would not necessarily will fit all the adults, but it's not just the sensor changes that comes as we age. It's not just the visual and the hearing loss, but there are other issues that comes as we age. For example, cognitive changes that people tend to experience, like changes in selective attention, my ability to focus on one stimulation that interests me and ignore the rest, or our processing time. Things take much longer as we age, or emotional changes, what's important to me. All those issues interact with the way where all the adults interact with their product. And accessibility is really tiny things, but when we look at a product and we want to make sure it's inclusive, we should ask ourselves all sorts of questions which are not necessarily under the umbrella of accessibility. We should ask ourselves whether all the users think this product really answers a problem that they have. Do they want to use it? Does it really solve a problem that they have? They feel they need it? Whether it's enjoyable? Are they proud to use it? Do they feel safe while using it? Do they trust the company? all those issues are other issues that are not necessarily in the field of accessibility. Actually, they are not. So we're looking at the area of usability. We are looking at the value the product has, but we're also looking at levels of enjoyment and engagement with the product. So it's whole area that we need to take a look if you want to make sure that our product is inclusive.
Well, it sounds like your background in psychology is really useful.
Yeah.
Considering all these things.
Yeah, thank God I had. I spent a few years in studying about people behavior and motivation.
Which are all the things that you need if you want to have users not just adopt your product, but also be engaged with it on a daily basis, hopefully. So can you give us some examples for tech companies that you've worked with in the past that implemented best practices of age-inclusive design and saw an increase in engagement metrics?
My favorite example is a company called Simply. I'm sure some of you heard of the app called Simply Piano. It used to call JoyTune. Simply is a wonderful platform for people to learn new hobbies and to have more creative things in their daily life. So they teach people how to play the piano, teach people how to play the guitar, sing and draw. And we started working together because they wanted to increase the usage of the 50 plus users who download the app and start playing the piano, which I don't need to tell you how crucial and amazing thing is for all the users to start playing a new instrument. And what we saw was, as I mentioned before, when users start using a new product, he asks himself whether I can use it. Does it really answer a problem that I have? What's the value I'm going to get for it? And how enjoyment it is. And slowly, step by step, we started doing intervention, whether it's intervention in the field of usability, to making the navigation better, whether we introduced them with new things that were really important for them. For example, playing with sheet notes, or just making it more fun and giving them the ability to practice more. And slowly we saw an increase of 75% in the conversion rate. We saw an increase in 75% the people who actually subscribed for the app among the 50 plus. And I think it's something amazing because so many companies don't think to reach out and target this audience. And it's an amazing audience. Once they subscribe, you see the retention rate is much more higher than in younger segment. And I would say even something stronger than this, some of the successful tests that we did and the successful intervention that we did also work for younger segment as well. So we managed to implement the conclusion that we had to younger segment, and it was also a big success.
Wow, so a 75 increase in conversion from the free version to a paying customer?
Yeah.
So implementing age-friendly user experience actually increased conversions by 75%, which has a direct impact on the company's bottom line. And it also helped younger users be more engaged with the app. That is quite remarkable.
Yeah, I do have to say that, and we were quite lucky because when users download the app, right at the beginning stage, we asked him several questions. One of the questions was how old you are. So we were able to build a different journey map. And soon after he answered his age and certain question about his experience, they're going to be 20 minutes while he's playing 5 different notes until he reached the paywall. So it was quite a long process, quite a long time.
Wow. Can you give us another example for another?
One company I've been working with called MediSafe. MediSafe has an app that reminds people to take their meds on time. And one of the features called MedFriend. A user can ask for one of his relatives, to get notification every time he forgets to take his meds on time. So for example, I can define you, Karen, as my relative, and in case I forget to take my meds on time, you will get an alarm saying, hey, Michal forgot to take her med, do you want to call her or something? Now this feature was crucial when it's come to retention or when it's come to adherence of medical users who actually use this feature, so high increase in the adherence. We really wanted to increase the engagement in this feature. What we did was first sending a message saying, hey, did you know that 70% of the people forget to take their meds on time? And the reason why we did it was because older adults, when they tend to forget to take their meds on time, the first thing that comes into their head was, oh no, I have cognitive decline and so on. So they start to blame themselves. While younger users say, oh, I'm so busy, absent mind, whatever. So we wanted to normalize it. We want to make our user to feel it's okay to forget your meds. 70% of the people do it. So we start sending people, hey, did you know that 70% of the people forget to take your meds on time? Want to make sure that you won't forget your med? Take a look at this feature. And what we did was along this feature really divide the message to really short and precise ways to make them understand the value of this feature in really simple language, short sentences. One message per screen, really explain them shortly what it means and make them sure that they can regret anytime they want. And we saw an enormous success in the conversion rate of this feature by 20%, which was an enormous success. And when we applied it to younger users as well, we also saw quite an immense success, so which was a really nice case study.
Impressive. Yeah. So what types of digital products have to be accessible to older people?
Which aren't. In the beginning, like maybe 20, 30 years, you would say all the users, they might need, health services to be more accessible and so on. Nowadays, almost every product should be, whether it's a B2C companies, we saw such a huge increase in so many different sectors and fields, whether it's the working force or whether it's the consumer market or whether it's the banking online, whether it's health. And I do all sorts of different sectors that we see an increase in the engagement and the usage of older adults. But I do want to say that we also start seeing companies who are B2B that actually start to understand that a lot of their workers are becoming older and they need to reconsider the way that digital platforms are and the way they introduce with the new features and so on. So we start seeing a small shift in the field of B2B as well.
Wow, so even B2B companies understand that their internal product or the products that they are designing for other companies have to be age inclusive.
And yet I do want to say that there's a lot of ageism in this field, in the tech industry in general. In so many cases, the average age of the worker, I usually work with the product teams, usually they are between the age of 20 to 40 max. There's a lot of ageism in this field, and it's still hard for a young designer to understand what it means to be an older user and why is it so hard for an older user to use the interface that he just designed. So we have a lot of work still ahead of us.
For sure. So if there are any bootstrap startups watching us and they don't really have the budget even to hire a full-time designer, but they still want to make sure that the product is accessible out of the gate, how can they apply best practices of age-inclusive design on a budget?
Okay, so I think the first thing is to making sure that your product would be usable. And I think this is just really the base, without asking further questions like the value of the product and how engaging it is and so on. So just making a product that actually users can use. When we talk about usability, there are three core elements when we talk about all the users. The one is the UI, the idea of the colors that we use, the contrast and so on. And there are really basic guidelines that we should keep, and they're out there. There's a lot of guidebooks out there and a lot of text. And Karen is showing the guidebook that I wrote on behalf of JDC, the Joint, and the National Digital Agency. And it's free, it's online, and we can provide them with a link. So the first issue would be the UI. And the second issue would be the UX, the navigation and the architects of this field. So there are a few tips that would be easier for us to make sure, like very simple, straightforward architects, not too many buttons on the screen, making it very straightforward, one task per page. Like there's certain things that could make it very easy and simple. And this is the second element. And the third one would be microcopy. Older adults tend to rely more on the words that they read, so adding labels to the buttons, not to just put some icons on the screen thinking it will be okay. So adding labels and a lot of success messages, like those really small things that we can do to make our product more usable. And it's not that hard, even in early stage, to make your product usable. I think the other questions, like how you turn your product to be more engaging and fun, and how it really answer the pain points and the needs, those kind of questions sometimes are questions that the product find himself asking in later stages.
So can I start with best practices when I'm bootstrapped, and then when the startup raises funding, hire someone like you to really help us go through the in-depth process of making the engagement right for all users?
Exactly. And we also need to understand, and I'm talking, it's not in early stage, maybe it's a bit when the product is a bit more mature. As I would not design a product for young children the way I design it maybe for older adults. We change during our life course. Some things that were very important for us in early stages are not that important, or we are more afraid of risk. And our social connection tend to change, and it's all interact with the way we behave with our digital platforms. So those kind of things are the things that we should consider later on.
Absolutely. And I always talk about the fact that age is a number, but it's really all about the life stage we're on, the motivations that we have in later life that might be different, the fact that we're at the decumulation phase rather than the accumulation phase. So there is a lot to consider when you're building a product for older adults. And these are a different set of considerations than you might if you're just building a game for teenagers.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to add?
I think first we should be humble, and we should be very curiosity. And we should, if you want to make a really good product that actually can answer their needs, we should be very precise in our ability to ask the right question at the right time with the right people. So in so many cases, we find ourselves asking questions of, I don't know, whether it's usability, when we want to understand the value of the product or the idea that we have. In so many cases, we don't really listen to our users' really need. In some cases, what they would really want would be something totally different than what we had in mind. And we need to be more humble when we reach out this segment. I think we all tend to be a bit ageist, and we seem to think that we know better than our users, and we are not necessarily.
Absolutely. We are not our users, so you have to be in contact with your users early and often.
Yeah.
And listen to what they have to say, and ask lots of open-ended questions, and try not to insert bias into the process. It's hard, but it's doable.
Yeah, and I also, in many cases, this is going back doing research, but in so many cases, users won't be able to tell us what they need or what they want, but they would be able to share us the problem that they have. And I think it's our aim to try to better understand the problems in order to find a solution. So I think this could be a good tip.
It's an awesome tip. Michal, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Karen.
If you want to dive deeper into creating awesome products for older adults, Michal and I will be teaching a masterclass in January. So Michal will be teaching you how to create engaging digital user interfaces for older adults, and I will be sharing my own experience on how to do preliminary user research and figure out what your users actually want you to build for them. We'll have the link to sign up in the show notes, and we'll also have the link to this wonderful handbook and a bunch of other articles that Michal thinks are worthwhile reading. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of the AgeTech Podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and get notification buttons so you can get a notification whenever we publish a new episode. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious,